Welcome to the end-to-end data analysis project, where we're going to be looking at a employee retention program and building everything in Google Cloud. So here's our game plan. This is a fully Google Cloud project. So what we're going to do, we're going to build a database using BigQuery. We're going to connect that database to Python using a Google Colab notebook. And we're going to build a churn model in that notebook. We're going to export the data or our findings from that churn model back into BigQuery. And then we're going to build a dashboard in Looker Studio. So here is our problem statement. We have a request from our stakeholders for a pilot program they're working on. They are having issues with keeping employees. They would like a data analyst to help proactively find employees that are at risk. Our approach is to select a pilot program with new employees, build a auto ML or machine learning model trained on previous data that can predict new employees will leave. And then we're going to have a deliverable that's a dashboard. Now, we usually want to break all our analysis projects into essential questions, and I like breaking down these into two parts: the analysis questions versus the project questions. The analysis is going to be what we need to do after we do our analysis. For example, what is causing employee churn? Who is predicted to leave? Are employees satisfied? What departments have the most churn? And these analysis questions you can work out with your stakeholders, because that's going to be very important. And they want these questions answered. For the project questions, we want to know, what does success look like? So how would a successful project look like? What does failure look like? What trends are important? What actions affect the trend? So we can answer that now. So here are our project questions. So what does success look like? A highly accurate prediction model. What does failure look like? An inaccurate model. What trends are important? Features that are causing churn. So the features will be the things about the particular employee that are causing them to leave. And what actions affect that trend would be, okay, what recommendations can we take? So let's talk about the machine learning workflow that we're going to build. So we're going to train the machine learning model on 70% of our existing 15,000 employees. Then we're going to test and tune the ML model for accuracy with the remaining 30% of our held out 15,000. Then we're going to predict using that trained model on our new employees to see who will likely leave. And here is our dashboard, how we're going to lay things out. This is kind of like just a very basic wireframe. So you see we have a title and a filter, the main KPI, which is going to be our churn prediction, the model explanation, how it works, some supporting KPIs, what is causing churn, and we said maybe we'll use a bar chart. Supporting KPIs such as how many are churning, and then maybe something like is for our existing pilot program, where is churn occurring? So what departments? And we can use a stacked bar chart for that. So here's the built out dashboard, just so you know what it looks like. So we're going to build this in Looker Studio. It might look a little different from this, but let's go ahead and start building our cloud project. So our data set consists of two files. Let's look at the first file, and this is the data that we're going to get into BigQuery. So we have these columns that are represented by the features of the individual employee, represented by this employee ID. We have satisfaction level, last evaluation, number of projects they're working on, the average monthly hours, time spent at the company, work accidents, whether they quit the company, and you can see this is based in zeros and ones. And the reason being that 1 equals that they have already left, and you can see zeros is going to be that they have stayed at the company. So that's our Boolean value there. And you can see the zeros there. Whether they have been promoted or not, which also is indicated by 0 and 1. Also, the department they work in, the salary, which is categorical, which is low, medium, and high, and their employee ID. Now, this is our full data set, and what we're trying to predict is whether they quit the company. And this is going to be the data set that we train our model on. However, we're going to have another data set, which is going to be our predicting data set once we train the model. And this is going to be our pilot program, which is going to have our whether they quit the company or not. And this is going to just be all of the employees that are existing at the company. So we're not going to have any ones in our quit the company column, because these are all employees that are here in the company, and we want to know, are they at risk for leaving? So we need to get these two data sets back into our database that we're going to build in BigQuery. So let's go into the Google Cloud Console, and this is very easy to get to. So here I am in a Chrome browser, and all you want to do is you can Google Cloud, or you can just type in console.cloud.google.com, or if you just want to go to BigQuery, you can just Google BigQuery and it's going to take you there. But I want to walk you through how all of this works. So in Google Cloud, you have a project, and you have to initiate this project. You can see here is a project that I have. Now, I'm going to log into a different account, just show you what it looks like when you have it. You won't have that project there, but you'll be able to create it. Everything else should be the same. As you see here, if we put those things side by side, it's almost the same. It's just that you can see that the project is there, and you'll be able to create a project just by going into create a project. So let's do that here. So we create a project. You might not have anything here, but you just go up to the top corner here, go to new. You create the project you want. You go to create. It will create the project. As you see it creating here. Once that project is created, just select the project. And then you can see you have been brought into this interface. And so there are a lot of different things here. You could just simply search for BigQuery. See, if you go to the top in the search bar, just go to BigQuery. And then you're going to be brought to this dashboard. You just hit done. Now you make sure you are using your free credits, because if you can use I think it's about 500 free credits, and that is way more than you need for any small project. So I'm going to hit done. And now we have this console that you're looking at. Now I'm going to go back to my account to show you what that looks like, and then we'll still come back and we'll create it from scratch so you'll know each of the steps. So I'm going to go into run a query in BigQuery in my project from my existing account, just to show you the structure. This is your project. Now I'm going to go to the project that I created called data analysis to show you. I have a hierarchy here, which we are all going to create from scratch. I have the queries that I have saved. I have a notebook. I have a data set. And then here are all the tables that we are going to create. Now we're going to do this from scratch so you understand what we're doing. So here we go. I'm going to do this completely from scratch. I'm going to create a new project like you already done. I'm going to call my project our Churn Cloud project. And then I've got no organization. Now I've created that. And I am going to make sure I am on that project. You can see it being created here. I just select it. And now we have our Churn Cloud project. Now, once you have that project here, you can see there should be nothing in it but external connections. We are going to click here and we're going to go to create a data set. And then you need to give it a dataset ID. I'm going to call it my employee data like this. And I'm going to create the data set. I'm going to leave it multi-region. Mine is based in the United States. And then I'm just going to hit create data set. And now you have your employee data set. Now, once we have this data set, we can start creating the tables that we need to create. And this can be done easily by just uploading those tables into this data set. So it's a little bit different terminology, but you should be similar to database, adding your tables to a database. Now that we have our data set built, we can start adding tables to this data. And if you just click into that data set, you can just see kind of some of the information when you created it and what data set ID it's going to belong to. Some of these little features are going to be important to us. So first, what we want to do, now that we have our data set created, we can click into the ellipsis or the three icons, and we can do create a table. Once we have create table, we're going to import and upload our tables that we have reviewed, which are going to be our employee table and then our new employee table. This is going to right now be an empty table in this section. You're going to click into that. And then what we're going to do is we can do two things. We can upload this CSV to our original data set here, or we can give it where our drive is located. So you got to decide what you want to do. If this is something that you want to upload, and it cuts down on uploading it twice, so let's just upload it. So then we go to browse file. You find out where you put that file. I'm going to bring in my table HR data. You can see now you have the table from upload. We have select the file. It's going to be in a CSV format. It's going into our Churn Cloud project, into the data set, employee data, and then the table name. I'm just going to give it the same table name, TBL underscore HR underscore data. And that is going to be the name of our table. Now, schema is going to be whether we want it to detect the columns. And because it's in CSV format, we can just go ahead and click that. So for auto detect. And we don't need it partition, and we also don't need to worry about clustering because it's a relatively small data set. Then we go down to create table, and it's going to initialize that creation. And now you see in this table, in your data set, you have your table. I click over to it. You can see here is the schema, which are all the columns that we have reviewed previously. And let's get our other table in with the same steps. So I'm going to go over to the ellipsis, go over to create table. Then I am going to go to CSV. From upload, go to browse, get your new employee table. I'm going to call this TBL underscore new employees for our pilot program. Then I am going to auto detect the schema. And then I'm just going to go down and create that table. The job is done. You can see there. Now you have 2 tables in your data set. Now we're going to reference these 2 tables when we are building our model. And what you can do is you can right click this by going over to the ellipsis, and then you can go to query, and then you see it's going to generate this little query for you. I am going to just put star for select from. It gives us our project name, our data set, and then the table name, and then it puts a limit here. If I bring in the wildcard and I bring in that wildcard and I run it with the star, you can see here are all our different files that we want to be using. Now we are going to create a view for us to use as our reference table. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this query and I'm going to add another column here, as you see here. And what I want to do is I want to add a column here. I'm just going to put a column next to that star. I'm going to take out the limit 1000. And then I am going to put in quotations, I'm going to put original as, and I'll just call it type for my column name. And I'm going to run this and just show you what this looks like. And now you can see at the end of this, we have this string value call type. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to combine the 2 data sets. So I'm going to take this query here, copy it, and then we're going to use a union, so union all, to bring in all of the tables that we want. So union all. And then I'm going to copy and paste this. Now I don't want to bring in this table. I want to bring in this table. So I just need to change the end of my query to the correct table name. So new underscore employees, because this is going to be our pilot. And now I don't want to call this original because I want to have a different categorical name. I'm going to call this a pilot. And then I am going to run this. And you can see here we have our new employees, IDs, plus the type here. We have pilot, and we have our history. Now, the one thing we want to check is to make sure we have the right amount. So you can go down to the results here and you can see it's like 15,104. Now, if I run this, you can see that it's 15,004 and we have the original. So we have 100 in our pilot program. Now that we have our query and we know it's working, what we want to do is go up to save, and we want to save this as a view, save as a view. And now we don't want to use a new data set. We want to choose the original data set that we built. And then let's give it our new table, and let's give it TBL underscore full data. And this is going to be my name. You can give it any name you want. And I'm going to go to save. And now you see you have this different icon here, and now we will be able to use this view, which is a combination of these queries. Now that we have our data all ready to go, let's create a Google Colab notebook. So I'm just going to just use this here. I have just Google Colab. You have access to it if you have a Google account. And let's make this bigger, and we'll leave our other one open. So all we want to do is open Colab or get a new notebook. So I'm going to get a new notebook, and you might have existing notebooks already. And this is what your notebook is going to look like, and the Colab symbol. Let's give it a name. So what we want to do is name this our pilot Churn. It's going to be the name of my notebook. And now that we're in Colab, what we're going to be able to do is build our model very quickly and connect this to BigQuery. So that's going to be the first order of business. Okay, let's connect to our BigQuery using Colab. So the first thing I'm going to do is give myself a nice heading. So let's say connect, then put a heading, connect to BigQuery. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to choose code. And let's bring in the libraries that we need. And I'm just going to just document everything with those little hashtag strings. So from google.cloud, let's get our BigQuery instance. So BigQuery, we bring in that library. And then from google.colab, let's import our authentication. And we call this auth. And what's that going to allow us to do is authenticate when we're using BigQuery. So I'm going to document, let's authenticate. We want to use the auth variable that we brought in there. And you can see if you hover over it, it's going to bring you some information. And then we use the authenticate underscore user function. I believe let me make sure this is spelled right. And if you can always hover over it to see what the function does. Now let's initialize that client, and we're going to need our project ID. So I am going to initialize the client from BigQuery, and let's get our project ID into a variable project ID. And if you don't remember your project ID, which I don't, I'm going back over to BigQuery. And what I can do is I can bring that in. I can go over to where we have our projects here, and I can just click into that. And I have the Churn Cloud project. I spelled it wrong, so it's good that we're copying it and pasting it. And then I'm just going to copy that, and then I'm going to come back over here and put that in quotations, and there we go. So then we don't have to keep writing this over and over again, so we'll make the code real clean. And then let's get the client, which is going to be that BigQuery function library that we brought in, and then we use client. We pass it our project ID with the project parameter, so equals project underscore ID. And then we also want to tell it the location, and we want to say US, which is what I picked. Now that we have that, what we can do is just run that to make sure everything is working, and it is, and you can see by the play button. Now let's get our data set. So let's say get the data set and table. Because remember, the data set represents kind of the data warehouse or the database there. So the way I'm going to kind of get this all going is I'm going to use a reference, and then I'll pass that in. So data set reference. And this is passing in all the information that goes into finding that data set. So I'm using the client, I'm using data set. And then what I'm going to do is pass in my data set name, which was employee data. And then the project ID, which we already have saved, we can use project underscore ID. Now that we have that reference there, we can pull in the data set, which is going to be your database in a sense, equals the client. And then from there, I want to say just get the data set. Of course, you could put all this in one line, but it's kind of hard to read. So I'm now use a data set reference. Now that we have a data set, or where that is in BigQuery, now we just need to get the table out of the data set. So for this, we actually need two tables because it doesn't really allow you to do a lot of analysis with Colab with a view. So let's bring in that table, the original tables that we created. So now what we're going to do is we'll just make a table reference, same as where we get all the information about the table. And that's going to be client.dataset. And then we remember that client.dataset, oops. Now we get a table reference here, and then we use the dataset.table. And then from that table, I'm going to bring in, let's see the name of our table. So let's go here. And then we have these two tables, table HR table and table new employees. So let's get the first one in, the table reference. We're going to call that our table underscore HR data. And then once we have that table reference, we can use table variable, and then we can say let's use a client to just get that table based on a table reference, what we're calling it. And remember, let's just bring this one in first to see if it's working. So I'm going to do table.schema. And let's run this to see if we got everything going. Yep, and here are all our tables. And while we're here, let's just go ahead and bring in the new table. And all we need to do is just bring that in with the same information that we've been using. So we already brought in this for our data set. Now we just need to bring in the new table reference. So I'm going to make this on another line here. And then I just copied and pasted those two lines. And I'm going to call this my new table reference for that new table. And that's going to be called new employees for our pilot program. And then for our new table, so we're just updating this. And then we just bring in the new table reference and new table ref. Yep. Yep. And let's make sure we add new here. And then we just print out the new table schema to make sure it's working. Yep, and we're all good. Now we need to convert these to data frames. Convert to data frame. And all we need to do is we need to just do a very easy step here. So let's call we're going to make two data frames. We'll call the first one data frame. And then we'll just use the client to list all the rows in the table. And then let's pass in the table equals table. And then all we're going to do is say to data frame function for that. And then we can check the first 5 rows with the head function. And boom, there's our table from your BigQuery connection. As you see this is the main employees table. So now all I need to do is just create another line here. And let's call this we'll call this df2 for our pilot, and then we just pass in a new table, and then we just update here df2, and now we have those two data frames, and this should show us our other table that has our pilot, and we can see the new employee ID there. Now we're ready to start building our model. Okay, let's build our model. Let's start out with a heading. So I click text, and I'm going to say build. And then I'm going to get another heading here, but I'm going to make this a subheading. So I'm going to start off with this, two hashtags, and I'm going to call this install PyCaret. You may not have to do this, but it's good to just do this depending on whether you're using Jupyter Notebook. So I'm going to install PyCaret. So we're going to do a pip install, and then we're going to say PyCaret. And PyCaret is going to be the library that we use to build our classification model. So I'm going to just run this. Oh, and actually we need to just initialize the heading, and then come down to code, and I'm going to install PyCaret as code, and I want to make sure this is a subheading. Yes, it is. So now we pip install PyCaret. So we're going to run this code, and it's going to install PyCaret. It should take just a few minutes. And while that's installing, I'm going to also build another heading here, and I'm going to say code and train model. So now we can have that clean structure here where we can just depress some of this so we can not have our notebook so strange. So you can see you got a warning here, but everything should be good. Now what we're going to do is let's get our model, and we're going to do from PyCaret dot classification, because we are trying to predict a class, whether they're going to stay or leave. We want to import everything, and we do that with this symbol, which allows us to bring everything in. And I run that. And now let's set up our model. And this is going to be very easy and straightforward because we're using this AutoML package, which is PyCaret. So I'm going to do setup. And setup is going to be the function that allows us to bring what we want the model to do. So I want to give it a data frame. This is the setup. And let's see if I can. I'm going to load the parameters just so you can see it. So you can see it takes the data. We need to give it a data frame, and we can use a lot of the features and parameters there. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So it's positional, so we're going to give it the data frame. Then we're going to give it our target, and as you can, let me just go up here and let me depress this. This is why I wanted to make the subheading, because you can see now it's hidden and it doesn't interfere. We want to give it the target of quit the company here. So I'm just going to copy and paste that, bring that back down to our model. So this is what we want the model to try to predict. We also want to give it a session ID. So I'm just going to call it 123. And we also want to tell it to ignore some of our features. For example, everything is good here, but our employee ID is not going to add any value. So we go here and we say egg and comma, and then we can find, you can see the features in there. We have ignore features here. So I'm going to say ignore underscore features, and we will pass a string, I believe, in this list, and we're going to tell it to ignore our employee ID because it's not going to be helpful. Now, we can also pass it some additional information to make it improve. So I'm going to say, hey, I want you to ignore this. And I also want to tell it we have some categoricals. For example, maybe what I'll do here is escape and A to get another section here. And let's look at the info of that data frame. And you can see that everything here is numerical except department, salary, and employee ID. We already have dealt with employee ID, but let's deal with departments. So we want to say for salary, we can hit tab. I want to pass it to categorical features. So categorical underscore features. And then we can also pass it salary, which is going to be somewhat categorical, and departments. And let's make sure because I believe, let's get the columns. So I'm going to, just so df.columns, because I believe, let's see, oops, columns, S in. So yeah, let's get departments here. And we can just pass that in. And I believe we should be good to go with setting up our model. And let's run this. And we have an issue. Session ID. So I need to pass session ID into this underscore ID. And you can also, if you want to format this a little bit, we can just format it at the commas here so you can see some of the parameters a bit better. And now you can see how everything is laid out. Now let's run this, and you can see it's running. And here is our model. So you can see here's the information, and we can see all of the things that have been done to this for pre-processing it, and we will look at that in just a moment. So there are many classification models. So the beauty of using this AutoML library is that we can use this to compare all of the classification models in sklearn. So I'm going to use the compares models, and then we'll be able to talk about some of the metrics. So you can see I have this compare models, and I'm going to run this, and let's let this run. And what we're going to be given is a collection of different models, and we'll be able to judge them on recall, precision, area under the curve, and accuracy for our model. And then our F1 score is the combination between recall and precision. So let's let this run, and we can look at all the different classifiers and choose the one we want, and also judge by the metric that is most important to us, whether it's accuracy, precision, or recall. So now you can see we've been given all of the parameters with our model, and it's chosen the random forest classifier as the best model. And you can see what it also has some of the best metrics here in terms of accuracy, and we can maybe stick to this metric for our decider, because remember they wanted, one of the measures of success was a highly accurate model. Now precision is going to ensure that when our model predicts that we have an employee that will churn, it's right. So it's about being correct in our predictions. Now recall is a little bit different. It's going to ensure your model catches most of our employees who will churn. So it's about not missing actual cases. So it comes down to whether we are trying to optimize for false positives or false negatives. So false negatives is going to be what we're optimizing for recall, and false positives is what we're going to be optimizing for precision. But here's accuracy, so we'll use this model. And it also has the best F1. We can dive into that later. So now that we have this model built, we need to choose it. We want to choose this RF model. And what we're going to do is go down here, go to code, and let's create this model since it's the best one in terms of metrics. So let's say RF model as our variable equals create model. And so we're going to create that model. And all we need to do is go here and pass it the indicator here, which is RF. And this is going to do everything we need. So it's going to run that again. And it's going to take 10 folds of that data, so looking at different sections of that data and then coming up with the mean across all of those different scoring metrics. And we can still see our accuracy average is super high, and then the standard deviation is really low. So now that we have that model that's been trained on that data, we can ask it to now predict and give us a data frame. So I'm going to say, now give me a final data frame with the predictions. So I'm going to say final df, and I'm going to say predict underscore model. So this is the function that we're using. And then all I need to do is pass it our RF model that we just created. And then I run this, and you can see what we're getting. And I also make a little space here, and then just show you what that final df looks like. So final data frame underscore df, give us the head so we can look at the top 5. And you see we get all of those metrics back and a prediction score. So we get the prediction score and we get a prediction label. Now the prediction score is going to be the probability that it's correct. And then the prediction label is going to be whether they have quit or not. And you can see here is the actual and here is the available. And because this is going to be the predictions on the data that was not used in training the model, this is not going to be all of the data for all of your predicted. Let me just give you an example. So final df, and I'm going to use info. You can see that it's only 4,000 entries. This is the data that was held out that the model used to predict on to test itself. So if I just use the df, you're going to see it is a much bigger data frame at 15,000. So now we can use this model that we built and do predictions on our new pilot data. So let's do that. So now what we can do, we can say, hey, I would like you to predict. So we can use that predict model again. And we could say, use the RF model that you've been trained on, and then use for our data, use the new data frame that we created. And now we want to give this our new predictions as the name of the data frame that we're going to hold it in. And then just let's get, and it looks like we have new df is not defined. So let's just go back up and see what we call our new data frame. And here, df, we called it df2, not new df. So now we just pass it df2, and it's going to run over that total amount. And now you can see it ran, and then our accuracy is still super high on the data that is held out, 93%. So let's use df2, and let's look at the head. Oh, sorry, let's use new predictions. And let's look at the head. And now you can see that we have our total data frame here, and then we have the prediction here. So we can even have the prediction score. So you can see it's about 82% probability that this person is going to stay in the company. And there's a 52% chance that this person is going to leave. So now you have this set of employee IDs that we could pass back to our stakeholders and give a percentage that this person is going to stay or leave. So you can see this is a powerful thing that we can do. Now that we have this, we need to pass this back to BigQuery. So we have our new predictions here. And now we want to say, okay, take those new predictions and write back to BigQuery. So we just use that new prediction data frame there, and then we just use a function called to GBQ, BigQuery, Google BigQuery. We're going to pass it our reference, which is going to be the database or data set, and it was called employee data. Then we're going to say, okay, here is our pilot underscore predictions as the new table. Now we give it the project ID. So I'm going to say project ID. So I am going to say ID is the next part. And you can see as I'm building this, what the destination, then it says project ID. So I can just press project underscore ID because it's positional there. And then for chunk size, which is like, or if it's a big file, we can say none because it's relatively small. So chunk size is none. And if this table exists, so if exist, I would like you to replace it. Now we know it doesn't exist, but just in case we have to write multiple times. And of course we can kind of just format that a little bit so you can kind of see it very easily. And now we can write back to Google BigQuery, and let's just hashtag what we're doing. And we can say write back to BigQuery. And let's run this. And we have an error, so employee data. And what is our error? It says it's a unexpected if exist. You can see, so the only thing I've done here is I didn't add an S. And let's see if that's all good to go. And it looks like it is. So we let that run. And then you can see that it has written back to BigQuery. Let's open up BigQuery and see our table. So now we have our table here. And we should be able to just refresh this. Go back to our Churn cloud data here, and pilot predictions are there in BigQuery, and we can just do a quick query, and let's just do that in a new tab. And I'll say give me everything just by using that wildcard symbol. And this runs, and there is everything we need for our stakeholders. Now we need to do a few other steps to get another table in that we want to use for our features, to say which features or individual dimensions were best for predicting whether someone would churn or not. So let's look at the features that were most important to predict our employee churn. So this is going to tell us what of our columns or features or dimensions led to our model predicting whether someone would churn. So I'm going to pass it our RF underscore model. And I'm using this plot model function to show you this visually. And then I am going to use the plot. We can choose the plot that we want. And I'm going to choose feature. And that should give us the feature importance. So these are, and let me zoom out a little bit. These are the predictors, which makes a lot of sense, right? If you're not satisfied with your job, you're probably going to leave. Time spent at the company is something that is predicting whether people will stay or go, and yeah, people get a little bored after a while. Number of projects and average monthly hours may lead to stress. Maybe the last evaluation was not good also. And then you can see work accident, low salary, high salary, medium salary, and whether the technical department seem to be also a predictor. Now what we want to do is get this into a table, and it's quite easy to do that, but we need to do a few steps. So I'm going to get code here, and let me zoom back in. So luckily what happens is our model has all of these features. So first I'm going to import, well, let's say what we're doing first, create a feature table. And then I am going to use my RF model. And then I'm going to get the feature importances. So let me just show you what they are. Feature underscore name in underscore. So if I run this and feature up, we need to make feature, I think it's feature names. Let's try that. Yep, feature names. So these are all of the things that were used to predict. And let me just show you in the next column. All of these have a value associated with it that you can see here. So we need to get that value. And that value is going to be feature importances. So feature underscore importances. So let me say, and I believe it's an underscore as a predictor in this. And then if I run this, you can see this corresponds to all of these. But we need to put it together, and we can do that with pandas. So I am going to just create another code here and just say import pandas as PD. And then I'm going to use the zip to zip these two together or force them to go together. So I want to take these names here, and I am going to put it in this function. And then I'm going to take these values, and I'm going to zip them together like a zipper. And then I am just going to wrap them in a data frame function to get it into a table. And let's call this our feature underscore table. And of course, let's give the columns the proper names. So when we pass those columns back in, I want those columns, and let me make it some space here because this is getting long. So I want those columns and to equal. Then I pass in the feature for the first, and then I'll pass in importance, and I'll show you what that looks like. So if we run this, and let's also take a look at the feature table, first 5 rows. Oh, we can look at the whole feature table. We don't need to reduce it to 5 rows. And now you can see what we get. We get a feature as this column name, and we get all of the importances, and we can see satisfaction is the best. Now we can literally take this and we can change and throw this into a data table into BigQuery. And all we're going to use is the function 2 gbq, and we pass in our employee data, and then we call it our feature underscore table maybe, and we need to pass it our project ID. So project ID, chunk size we don't really need, it's also super small. None probably is a default, but I wrote it anyway. And then we'll say if underscore exist, just replace it. So there we go. And let's run this. Let's go back to our BigQuery. And we can just simply refresh this, reload. And we should have our table. And churn. And there we go. Now we have all the tables we need to create the visual we want in our dashboard. So we are done with our model building. Congratulations. And we have our tables and outputs here in BigQuery. Now let's pop over to Looker Studio so we can build our dashboard. So if you are not sure how to get to Looker Studio, you would just go to this page. Just type in lookerstudio.google.com and it's going to take you through an overview page. So you can see I have quite a few reports. And I do have a short course on how to use Looker Studio, but you should be able to learn a lot in this course. But if you want to build up your skills, jump into that also. So I have this already open here, and let's see, this is the version that we're going to be using. And let me put this in a present mode. And you can see we have our model to predict churn as our title. We have our employees at risk and the pilot program. We have a departmental filter here which they can select from. We have the three main questions being answered. For example, what percentage of our new pilot is going to churn, which is at 5%. Then we have the number of departments that we have, the last evaluation average, the monthly hour average, and the time at the company. So these are supporting metrics that are a little less important. And then what is causing churn? This is the feature table that we brought into BigQuery. And you can see I highlighted the satisfaction label as a main predictor. It's a little bit off here, so I need to work on that. I have a definition of our pilot program here with a icon. And then I have how our algorithm works. I made a dimension here to say if most of our employees were satisfied based on this satisfaction level, since that is the main predictor. And where are people satisfied? I put this here so we can see which departments the user or the employee is going to predict from. So we have quite a lot that we have here. And we can easily select any one of these to filter our particular metrics here. So let's get into building this. And you may want to build yours a little different, but this answers all the questions based on what was in our brief. So let's jump in. So let me take this out of present mode. And I am going to open up a new Looker Studio so you can see where it says blank report. And I'm going to hit blank report. And this is going to give me access to where we want to connect our data from. And you can see we have quite a bit, and there is our BigQuery, so we can just bring that in. I'm going to click BigQuery. And then you are going to be presented with all your projects. So you should be a little bit more familiar with this hierarchy. I'm going to choose my cloud churn project. I'm going to choose for the data set is our employee data, which is kind of like a database, and then you can bring in the table that you want. So now you can see you can bring in a view for your table, and if you wanted to go back and run your model over all of your data, so you can have that in one go and have that in the full table data, you could. But I am going to just bring in what was required, which was the new employees. So that's going to be the first data set that I bring in. So you can see I can just click that and go to add. And you can see how easy it is to connect to BigQuery since you're all in Google Cloud. And you can see it tells us that the new employee tables is about to be added. I go to add report. And it should make a little visual here for us. And there we go. Now we need one more table. So I'm going to go back over to where it says data. And you can go down to the bottom. There are many places to add data here. But I'm just going to go to the bottom here and go to add data again. Go to BigQuery. And I want to bring in that feature table. So I'm going to go through the same process, employee data, and then bring in my feature table so we can see what features are used to predict the actual churn. And we get that message again, and we get add to report. And we should have our 2 data sets there. There they are. And now we're ready to start building our dashboard. Now let's pop over to Looker Studio so we can build our dashboard. So if you are not sure how to get to Looker Studio, you would just go to this page. Just type in lookerstudio.google.com and it's going to take you through an overview page. So you can see I have quite a few reports. And I do have a short course on how to use Looker Studio, but you should be able to learn a lot in this course. But if you want to build up your skills, jump into that also. So I have this already open here, and let's see, this is the version that we're going to be using. And let me put this in a present mode. And you can see we have our model to predict churn as our title. We have our employees at risk and the pilot program. We have a departmental filter here which they can select from. We have the 3 main questions being answered. For example, what percentage of our new pilot is going to churn, which is at 5%. Then we have the number of departments that we have, the last evaluation average, the monthly hour average, and the time at the company. So these are supporting metrics. They're a little less important. And then what is causing churn? This is the feature table that we brought into BigQuery. And you can see I highlighted the satisfaction label as the main predictor. It's a little bit off here, so I need to work on that. I have a definition of our pilot program here with a icon. And then I have how our algorithm works. I made a dimension here to say if most of our employees were satisfied based on this satisfaction level, since that is the main predictor. And where are people satisfied? I put this here so we can see which departments the user or the employee is going to predict from. So we have quite a lot that we have here. And we can easily select any one of these to filter our particular metrics here. So let's get into building this. And you may want to build yours a little different, but this answers all the questions based on what was in our brief. So let's jump in. So let me take this out of present mode. And I am going to open up a new Looker Studio so you can see where it says blank report. And I'm going to hit blank report. And this is going to give me access to where we want to connect our data from. And you can see we have quite a bit, and there is our BigQuery. So we click into BigQuery. We choose the project that we are using. I'm using my Churn Cloud project, getting my employee data set, then going over and getting my pilot predictions. So I click into that and I add. We get this warning, just add to report. And then you can see it's giving me a table here with the departments. Now we need 2 particular data sets. We have one. I'm going to go back into getting more data, go to add data at the top, choose BigQuery again, and we want to get that feature table that tells us the feature importance. Go back into employee data and then get the feature table. Now we have our 2 main data sets that are going to be added to this report. We don't need to connect them because they don't really have a connection that needs to be filtered. But now you can see in a second or so in this right pane here that we have our 2 data sets. We have our pilot predictions and the data for our feature importance. And you can see that table at the bottom there. Now we can get into setting how our notebook is going to look. So I want this to be a little bit longer. And this is going to be mirroring the same type of structure that our particular wireframe had, but we are just styling it the way we want. But you can style this any way you want. I'm going to go to theme and layout, and then it's going to bring up this right side pane. I'm going to hit layout, and then I'm going to change this to 1300 by 1400. And that is going to give me quite a lot of space. Oop, not 14,000, 1400. And that's going to give me quite a lot of space to work with here. And we can start building our dashboard. So here, I'm going to click into this white space, go back up to theme and layout. Now you can deal with the colors later if you want in terms of the colors of the visual, but I'm just going to go to layout here. And then I am going to, let's see, layout and then customize. And then under customize, I'm going to change the background. I'm going to change that to gradient because I want this gradient to be here. Now you may have to play with this to get it the way you want it to look. I'm going to use blue as my top gradient. But you can see blue is at the bottom. I want it at the top. So I'm just going to go over to 180 here. And then I'm going to add a few more color steps because you can see it's just blue and gray. So I'll add a few more. So that's one. I want a little bit more lightness so you can see. And I think I'll be okay with that. So now we have the background that we're looking for here. And now we can start visualizing this a bit more by creating the structure of our report. So as you see, this is our structure. So we just need a main KPI, a supporting KPI to tell whether they're happy and how many are churning and where are they churning. So if you remember the dashboard we had before, we should be able to build that quite easily. So let's start with our main KPI. And that main KPI, we are going to turn this into a scorecard. So I'm just going to go over and turn this into a scorecard by clicking chart and doing scorecard. And then you can see the number there. Let me change that to white by going to style here. And then going to the label color and going to white. And what I don't want the records count. And remember, we want to get a percentage here for our churn. So let's now get our employees for our predicted label. So here's our predicted label. If I bring that in, go back over to setup, go to label. And that's going to be our total sum of who is predicted because that's just summing that 0 and 1. Let's create a label here. So I am going to go here and now you can see this data. I'm going to go to add a field. Add a calculated field, and then I'm just going to get the sum of our predicted label as we see there, predicted label, and then divide that by the count of each one of those labels because each one of those individual lines is going to give us the total, right? So I can get the predicted label, which should be 100. And this will be our churn percent under the field name, churn percent. And now you can see in this green box here, this is valid. So I'm going to save it. And then go to done. And then you can see this populated here. So then I take my churn percent here. And then I just pop it there. And then now you can see it is 7%, and that is correct because it should be 7% out of 100. Now click into this which has your metric. And then we want to be able to not make this a number, but we want to make it a percent. And then there's your 7% for our churn. Now you might be asking, why was it different from the 5% and the other one? Because each time you run your model, the predictions can change. So now you have your first visual, which is the churn percent. This is going to be our main metric. And then let's copy. So Control and C and V, Control V, V. I want to have 4 of these for our supporting metrics. So I'm going to bring those a little bit further down and kind of keep them kind of evenly spaced. And the other one, those are going to be our 4 metrics. And now we want to make sure this metric is going to be our bigger metric. So we want to go and highlight it by clicking on it, go into Style, and then I'm going to change the font to Impact. So we would go down to Impact, which is in alphabetical order. So Impact. And I don't want the header here because I want to use a different font for that. So I'm going to click here for Hide Metric Name. And we also want to make sure this doesn't have multiple decimals. So you're going to go over to the right here and you're going to click into decimals, and you can either do 1 or 0. The last thing I want to do is make this very big, so I'm going to try 60, and that looks fine. So now we have these metrics here, which is this one, which is going to be our main metric, and then we will change the metrics here. The first thing I want to do is just go ahead and change the metrics here to make them easy. So I'm just going to choose a few metrics. So I want to get the total amount of departments maybe. So I'll go over to departments and I'll bring that in here, and it's going to count distinct. And there we go for the departments. I'm going to go over to style and then just center everything. Now I'll take the next one and I'm going to get let's do satisfaction level, and let's go to setup and satisfaction level, and it's going to get the aggregation of sum. I'm going to click here and change it to average and leave that as it is. Now I'm going to also, I want to maybe make sure this is centered. Same here, so I'm gonna let me center all. I'll center all those at the moment. So let's center, and then now you can see that we can clearly see we probably need to bring this over a bit. So I'm going to first let me finish adding these. So we can add satisfaction level, then we can add time spent at the company. I'm going to bring that in. Also going to change that aggregation to an average. So 3.3 years, and then we'll do one more for our last evaluation. And then we'll also turn that aggregation to an average. Now we got to make sure we have enough space for these. I'll leave it as it is, but let's continue building this first level here. So I definitely want to make sure I have a heading here. So I'm going to bring in another space, which I'm going to bring in another shape here that is a rectangle. And then I'm just going to bring that rectangle here. And I want that to cover this part. And I want that rectangle to be a solid color. So I'm going to click into colors. I'm going to go over to blue. Oops. And change the border and the fill to blue. And now we have our blue. We can also add our text here. So I'm going to get a text box. And I'm going to bring that here. And I'm going to say churn Okay, we have our churn model for the pilot program, and now we can just increase the font a little bit and change that color. I'm going to make that bold, and then I'm going to make sure the color is white. So just click into the lettering, and we'll just keep that in the center there. And now we have a title. We'll finish this off a bit later. Now, next thing we want to add is our circles. So I'm going to go to shape here, get the circle, and then just cover this with a circle by just bringing the circle out. And now I want to be able to make this circle the border. I want to keep a certain color. So I want to keep the border color white, and I want to keep the fill, if I click fill, transparent. Oh, and actually I want to make the fill here blue. So we can make that one blue. And now, as you see, if I try to send this to the back, let's see what happens. So I'm going to click arrange, order this, send backwards. Sometimes this doesn't work, but I'm going to try to send it all the way to the back. Sometimes you need to actually change the one behind, send to the back. Oh, there, it did work. Now, let's get our circles for our level here. So let's get our circle, and that's not a very nice circle. We got to make sure it covers. And now let's get the border to white and our fill to transparent, because we don't really want to highlight those, because those are, that looks fine. We can always play around and make it perfect later. Oops. So I actually want the shape and not the, and so that's our satisfaction level. Control V to get another one and bring that over. And you can see this is our time at the company. We're going to have to change the title here because it's too long for our circle. So I'll show you how to do that. And there we go. So let's click into the heading here, which is a box, and then we can go to setup, and then I'm just going to put for our title. So if you click into it, and there we go, and I'll leave last evaluation as it is. Next, let's get some text here, and I'm just going to open the text box, make a text here, and I'm just going to copy and paste my text, and I want to turn that all white. Then also make this a bit longer. There, I'll put that there. Then I'm just going to give it another title. So I'm just going to copy this and bring this down and just make it smaller. And I'm going to call this our then just make it smaller. We can just adjust that with a center and maybe close this off a little bit so it's not so in the way. And we can always add our icons later. Then I want to add one more title above our metrics here. So I'm going to copy and paste this, bring this down, and I'm going to make this much smaller. Call that 14 maybe, and I'll call that us supporting metrics. The next thing I'm going to do is just add a line here by clicking the line at the shape, and then I'm going to put my line here just so it covers all of our metrics here. And then I'm just going to go over and highlight that. Then I want to change that to like maybe a little bit of a darker gray. And now we have our first section done, and we can continue to our next section. So let's build our second section. We're just going to copy and paste our visual here, and we're going to bring that down to the far right. And I've also centered this one a little bit. And now I want to get a heading, so I'm going to copy this and copy and paste with Control V and Control C. Bring it down, and then I am going to make it a little bit smaller because I want this to be a different type of heading. Name it what features, but let's just say what is driving churn. And this is going to answer some of the questions that we had in our brief. So then I want to go here. I want to make the border white. And I want to fill this with, and I want to fill it with white. I want to fill it with blue. And I want the border to be white. And so there we go. And, or probably let's make the border the same as this color. So I'm going to go back over to border. And I'm going to choose this like kind of grayish so it doesn't stick out as much. Now, what I want to do is start to organize this section a little bit. So we need to do some work. First, let's get a bar chart. So I'm going, and we're going to use our feature table for our bar chart. So I'm going to click into the feature table over here. And I am going to click in on importance or feature, and then I am going to just go to bring this over like this. You can see it's coming over, and the features should come into a kind of table here. I'm going to go over and make sure I change the metric here and add. You can click this button here for add. And I'm going to bring in importance. So I just double click that. And you can see we get the feature importance there for everything. And then you can see here it's sorted by, but we want to sort it by the importance. So I'm going to bring this over. And looks like it's automatically sorted that way. So we need to sort it over here by feature. So you just click into this little icon over the table, sort by feature. Importance. And then you can see that satisfaction label is the top. And now we want to take this chart and we want to turn it into a bar chart. And not that bar chart. We just want to change it into a normal bar chart. And then let's sort it again by importance. And now we want to make sure we can see the label. So you need to position your mouse here right around where the label is, and you should see it change. There we go. And I'm going to pull that over. And now we can see everything. And right now it's sorted. So we will now have this visual here, and we want to bring this down a bit, maybe here, and let's make sure we have enough room. So maybe bring this up a tiny bit. And now we want to add our text. So I'm going to create a text bar here, and I'm also going to remove some of the colors here because I don't like them. And we want the colors to be pretty uniform. But let's get our text box so we can add that. So I'm going to get text box. I'm going to paint that here. And there's our text box. I'm going to copy and paste my text. Okay, so we're going to make sure we put the text box here. And I'm going to paste my text. Change the color to white. And just situate the box a little bit better. And then I also want a title so it sticks out. And I'm going to copy this one, copy and paste. Just call this section here is because this is talking about how our algorithm works. And now let's just finish the next section and then we should be good to go. So I definitely want another one of these. So I'm going to copy and paste that. So copy, paste. Now we have our visual. Let's bring it down. So it's here, maybe a little further down. Okay. And we want a bar chart here, and our bar chart here is going to be answering another question. So let's bring a heading here, and I'm going to bring that here. And then we can say where are people leaving or churning, whatever you like, as long as it's descriptive. And let's make sure that's lined up. And now let's just get where, and by where we mean department. So I'm going to get departments here and bring that here. Just drag it over. It's going to give you a table. I'm going to take this table here and turn it into a bar chart, but a vertical one. So I'm going to choose this visual. And now you have this vertical bar chart here. I'm going to just stretch it out so it gives us a good amount of space. And I don't want records count. Of course, I want to be able to bring in our total predicted here. So in order to do that, we're going to have to make some custom calculated fields for both of these sections. So let's do that. So let's add our calculated field. I'm just going to highlight the right data set. You can click into any one of the visuals to get the data set you want. And I want to get the average of our satisfaction level. So I'm going to add a new field. And then I'm going to make a conditional that says the average, when the average is greater than 50%, I want to say it's satisfied. And when it's lower than 50%, I want to say it's unsatisfied. So let's say case when, and this is going to be our conditional, our average, and then I want to say satisfaction level pops up, is lower than 0.50. I want to then bring back a string or a word that says unsatisfied. And then I want to say else. And then I want to give the opposite, right? Satisfied. You can say mostly satisfied. And then we also want to end this, right? So now we end it. And we can see the check mark here. Let's give it a name. I'm going to call this category. It doesn't really matter, right? We can always change it later. And then I'm going to save this. And then I save and then go to done. And now, instead of having this, I can go to my category, which should be here, bring this in and replace it. And now it's satisfied. Now we need to change the size of this. So let's just go ahead and change the size. So I'm going to go here and click this. And this should be a scorecard. So let's close that up. Let's go to style. And then I want to make this much smaller. Maybe 36. Yeah, that looks good. And we keep that here. And then let's give it a label. So I want to get I want to get a label, and I may have accidentally moved this. So there we go. I want to get a label, and let's say string, and I want to maybe put that down here, and I'm going to say employee status. I'll maybe say employee sentiment. It might be better. And I'm going to make this white. Going to center that under here, and maybe bring this up a bit. And now we have this as a label, and this should change as we filter by department, and we'll put our filter on in a minute. So, and everything is on this data set, so even if I click technical inside this, it should filter this. I want to make sure that works. Yeah, there we go. So you can see it's unsatisfied for that department. So we'll have to play around with the sizing, but I want to just show you how to build this first. So now we need to make one more for this, and we need to make a good conditional category for this particular graph. So we highlight the graph, go over to add a field, add a calculated field, or we could probably add a group, but let's just continue on. Case when, and we want to say case when our prediction label equals 1. We know that equals churn. Then we want to say then, say predicted to quit. Else predicted to stay. And then I'm going to just end that. And that we get the green check mark. So let's call this our prediction category. I save it. I go to done. And then we have our prediction category here. And then we're going to bring that over to breakdown. And now we don't want this chart, we want another chart. So we go to the chart and we want a stacked bar graph. So it would be this one. And now you can see we need to change our graph. Let's go back up down the setup. So we don't want the we want a prediction category to be here. And then we want to make sure that our departments is here. Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. Departments. It's going to mess up. There we go. Departments. And now you can see we have our predicted to quit and everything here. And we can sort this. And I'm going to do department. And now we have this sorted by department name. You can sort it by anything you like. I'm going to stretch it out a bit more. Now we need to deal with kind of making these look slightly better. So I don't want this to be this color. Then we can click. So you click bar order, and you go to bar. We're going to click bar order, and you can see this is the second order here. Then we just change this to orange, and it may take a minute. And now we have that as orange. I also want to make this bar a little bit more stylish, so I go to style. And then I am going to add a border, and I'm going to do white so it sticks out a little bit more. And then you can always make the bar color a little darker just by clicking on the bar order here. And then you can see we have predicted to quit, and the bar color goes a little darker. So it just stands out a bit more. And I'm going to change my axis here to blue instead of black. So go back to style, and then we go to the axis color here. And that's the grid. And I want the grid color here to be transparent because I don't need it. And then I believe that's the axis color. And then we just going to change those axes to blue. And now we want to get the number of predicted here. So all we need to do is we can just take the predicted label, I believe, and just replace this with the churn for churn percent for predicted label. And it should sum to your 7 there. Now we don't want the decimal place, so let's go ahead and move it. And that tells us how many people churned out of this whole category here. And we go decimal place, and then we go to 0. And then let's center this just to make it easier. Probably need to make this a bit bigger. And now we can add a label. So let's take the label from here. And we bring this down. And we do predicted to leave. All right, so that is done. Now we need to do one more, which is going to be our category here. So let's optimize this. First, we don't want all of these, and we want it to be sorted. So first, let's go over here, and we go to style. And then you can see the number of bars there. Let's bring that down to, let's say, 5. So I'm going to just type 5 in there. And that's just going to show us, oh, maybe show 7. That probably covers everything. Yeah, that looks better, 7. And then what we want to do, we can sort it. So I'm going to sort by importance. And now you can see that satisfaction label. Now, this is not going to make much sense to our management because this is just a number. So you could turn this into a percent, and it's going to be the same. So let's go to here, and then let's go to sum, because this sums to 1, the feature importance. So I am going to click into this and go to number, then go to percent. And you can see it's still the same. And I also want to like stylize this a bit more. So I'm going to go to style, and I am going to get rid of the grid. So we're going to make that transparent. And then we're going to make the grid white because it stands out at this section. Here we need to keep it blue. And then I am going to just add one more category here. Now, it's not necessary, but you can. So I'm just going to keep sorting that by importance. So let's just fix the color while we're here. So let's go up and let's make this blue. So we just click into the color. There we go. And now if you want the satisfaction label to stick out, let's also make this pop out with a little bit of blue. So we go to style, and then we go to our border. Here, let's change this to white so you can see it sticks out more. Now, you could leave everything like this, but I'll show you how I just group this and change the color. But before, let's just connect everything with a line. So I'm going to go get the line here, and I'm going to bring that here. Line. And then I'm going to connect that. Oh, and actually I want to use this line, the one that, so I want to use an elbow connector. So I'm going to start it here, and then bring it here, and then bring it here. And then how you see how it goes through everything. And let's change the color. Let's change this to our dark gray. And then make sure this is centered on this little diamond. And then we want to bring, of course, this forward. I'm going to click into this and arrange, move this all the way to the front. Then just go back and get your line, connect it again. And now we have that heading. Let's do one more. So let's get insert, get our line. Oh, we need an elbow connector. Come here, over here. And let's just change this back to our color we want. So let's go with our gray. Oh, maybe we keep this one white. It needs to stand out slightly more. There you go. Because of the color change, let me move this for a sec. And then let me make this come. There we go. Now we have that part done. Now we need to add a filter, and then we need to add a category for this line. I think it looks nice like this, but you can add that grouping there if you want. I'll just show you what it looks like with a grouping. So I'm going to add a field here after I highlight that data set, and add a group. Then you're going to select the field you want. We want to be able to select the feature because we just want to say find importance. I'm going to call this just a group for the name. And then for our group name, let's call it satisfaction. And then we want to include contains satisfaction because we're just going to bring back satisfaction level. Satisfaction. And then we want group remaining the others. We give it a name. Let's give it others. And then we save. Then we go to done. Then it gives us the group here. And all you need to do is highlight this now. Go to setup. And now we want to be able to add that down as a breakdown. So I'm going to add it here. And now you can see what happens is everything gets really thin. So we need to increase the size and then change the order. So let's go to style. So it's not a great way to do this, but you know, it's what we are working with. So now we can go to and we go to click into that, go into style, bar order, and then we want to change that to our color there. And then you get this bar order. Now let's make it a little bit fatter so we can see here. You can start playing around with bar width. It's already at 100, and you can see you can bring this up a little bit. So go here to record count, click into it, and then put this as importance instead of record account so we can keep the shape here. And then go to your group and bring in this as a dimension to break down. And now we go back over to our color, bar order for color, style, and then we change the second one to orange. So let's do that. There we go. So it's up to you if you like the way that looks. You might have to turn back down the bars to like 5 so you get a little bit better look. But it's up to you if you want to remove that grouping. See if you add it 5, it looks a little bit better. It's not really aligned correctly. But this is our dashboard. So we want to add a control. So let's highlight this. So we bring in the data set that we want here, and then we go to add a control. Then let's draw a drop-down list. And it's going to be departments. And you have this metric here that says, but this metric doesn't do anything besides show you, you know, the information here. And then I want this to have a gradient. So let's go over to style. And then I'm going to go to the background here. And then you just go down to gradient here, click gradient. And I'm going to choose that blue. And that looks good to me. Then I'll just put done. And now I'll change the text to white. And maybe I'll move this over a little bit. And this will allow you to like select departments and filter your dashboard. I don't think it's needed because it's more of a report than a dashboard, but this will give you some control over everything. So that will show you all of your metrics that are associated with that particular category. You can add icons if you want, and that way let me just quickly show you how to do that. So we would go to insert to get your icons, And we could just go from here to get icon, upload from a computer. You just choose an image, and then you can situate that image any way you want. And you can populate this with some nice icons. You can go to a website called Flat Icons, and it'll give you icons that you can bring in. But that's how you would build your dashboard. So you built your machine learning model, and we found out the satisfaction level was a big predictor, which is pretty normal. And so we can think about ways to improve that, such as maybe building an employee recognition program, which kind of boosts job satisfaction and motivation by addressing some of the key factors in causing churn. Then we could do a professional development initiative, investing in training. Employees can grow with the company, increasing their job satisfaction. Also, we saw that low salary was one of the predictors, and maybe we can reward long-term employees or employees that have a long tenure with some kind of advancement and salary that is greater. Now, you wouldn't have to come up with these particular suggestions. More than likely, your HR will, based on your report. I hope you enjoy building all this in Google. So please throw me a like and subscribe if you got some real value out of this.